on. But in this one, I didn't quite get why they did that. Because if she killed him, then why didn't she bury Judd and add him to the army, right?
Right. If that's her motivation after that.
Well, her
point.
motivation now is to recreate their family unit. I mean, that she's like, we can all be together again, and as twisted as that is, that's what I understood her motivation to be. But to all be zombies. So
yeah, but well, I mean, the thing is, this is I guess where this dovetails into. I applaud any filmmaker that's going to take make different choices and everything, but I think that this movie is undercut by a series of half measures, regardless of whether things were given away in the trailer or not. When Judd walks into that room and then kicks the bed aside and she's not under it, even if I hadn't seen the trailer, I know that is a big wink to the audience. Hey, if you saw the first one, we're going to do it differently, but we're still don't even send Judd into the bedroom, right? And I think that they did not handle I'm struggling with the name right now, but the student who dies in the beginning,
Pascal. Right?
Yeah, Pascal.
100%, John. 100%. I agree with you.
I just didn't, and
they didn't utilize him as much as they did in the first one. So it's almost like, why is he there?
Exactly. And I think that there was also the way that it's photographed, the colors are very washed out, and I get that they were trying to go for a very specific feel to things, but it really made me sleepy through most of it, because everything, like even the performances, and I understand the decision. I understand why they had understated performances at certain points, because it's supposed to convey this sort of I'm in a living nightmare and I can't wake up feeling, but I missed any sort of spark. Now, the original has a whole bunch of B-movie charm and misfires of its own, but it does have that charm. And it has Fred Gwynne as, he's the heart of that movie. But this one, all of the performances are very muted, a lot like the color palette. And that, I think, was something that made it very difficult for me to connect with it.
Yeah, Fred Gwynne, still my favorite Judd. Now, I love John Lithgow as an actor. Like, he's one of my favorite actors. I love John Lithgow. But he's not as good here. He's not as good as Fred Gwynne, because Fred Gwynne, he had that, like, man, this guy, he knows something I don't know, and he, like, wants to tell me, right? But he's like, it's just like there was something more going on there with Fred Gwynne and his whole relationship with him. And I feel like it just... no, I don't feel like it's a fact. Like, he had more scenes and more dialogue, more monologues about things. Like, he built up the mythology of the Pet Semetary. There's even the scene where, like, is anyone buried a person up there? Oh no, Christ on his throne, no, and that builds up to the inevitable. Like, he's gonna go bury his kid there. Here, those scenes don't happen, and because they've restructured things, like he doesn't save Gage from the truck. That doesn't even happen. He just comes across Ellie at the Pet Semetary. The housekeeper's not a factor anymore, which I agree with cutting that out, because that was kind of a dangling plot there that didn't need to be there. But then there's not a funeral that he talks to Judd. So there's just a series of scenes where you feel like you get to know this guy that weren't here. And so in addition to just like I don't know what you want to call it, but the charm that Fred Gwynne brought to it, that kind of twinkle in his eye, like that mischievous winkle in his eye, if you will. Lithgow is good, but he just seems like a beaten down old man, which is maybe what they were going for this time with Judd. But I much prefer the Fred Gwynne interpretation of the character and his performance.
Yep.
See, I liked Lithgow. I thought he was just as good as Gwynne. I don't know. I enjoyed him. I enjoyed the added interaction that he had with Ellie, and, how he's this lonely old man, and there's this little girl who's kind of got, like, no boundaries, who's, like, being his friend. I kind of like that addition to the story that we didn't quite have as much of in the first one. And he says in this movie, like, she got in my heart like nobody's done for a long time. And I bought that. I liked that a lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with Lithgow in this, and I think he did just as good a job as Fred Gwynne.
Well, I don't dislike him, right?
No, you hate him.
But see, it's like Fred Gwynne as Judd in this is like William Shatner as the guy Nightmare on 20,000 Feet on the Twilight Zone. John Lithgow does a good job, but he can never be as good as the original incarnation. So.
Well, I'll say Gwynne's Judd couldn't exist in this film. I agree, and I think Lithgow is fair. one of the higher points of praise I would have for the movie as a whole. I do like him. I think he brings an authenticity to the character, but I think that the core difference between the Judd in 1989 and the Judd in 2019 is the Judd in 1989. I don't know if it's just that sensibilities have changed, but I bought him as the town know-it-all. He was a walking history book of the town. Whereas Lithgow, even where they situate his house, he's set up more as crazy old hermit man. Whereas Judd in 1989 was more like the guy that people might try to politely avoid because they knew that every time they stopped, they'd have to talk to him for 30 minutes. And they didn't always have 30 minutes to talk to him. You know, that I think that is the core of the charm that's, for lack of a better word, that's missing there. I do agree that Lithgow is one of the high points of the movie as a whole. So,
I just wanted to see more of it. And this kind of ties into something else I want to bring up. This movie felt just fast to y'all. Like, it felt like it just went, because they took out these little subplots, like the parents, right? Like the whole like antagonistic relationship between Creed and his in-laws, gone. The family traveling back and forth, gone. So it goes by very fast, and we got near the climax, and I was like, whoa, is this? And it's really, it's not that much shorter than the other one, just by a few minutes, really, but it feels shorter. It feels faster. You don't have enough time to get a flavor of the whole town and all that kind of stuff. In this version, did y'all get that vibe at all?
No, yeah. I don't know. I thought it was a good pace for this movie myself.
I did get I did get that same sense, but what I didn't get that it was on fast forward so much as they made decisions behind the scenes or something of we don't really need that, we can kind of skip over that, and as a result I think that there's some connective tissue that it needed. Maybe it's missing Judd scenes that we're addressing here is where it goes wrong, is like if there had been more of that and giving Lithgow more time to, be on screen and be that guy and everything. And I just like the trailer, I think that this has a different horror movie sensibility, and it's one that I don't think works as well for this type of story, because it's missing the I mean, for lack of a better word, the sense of fun. Like, the original has this appreciation of the absurdity of what it's telling you, and it goes full in on it. And it's I think I said this, when we were talking about it before, you can almost feel like there's somebody sitting around a campfire telling you this story as a kid about this family that found an ancient burial ground and came back. Whereas this one is much more of a, it's almost like the same sort of disconnect I would feel with like a Zack Snyder DC movie, where it's like it's so obsessed with being quote unquote real that it sacrifices any of its sense of absurdist fun.
That's an interesting take. I'll have to think on that one here, because I don't know, like I thought the pacing was good, and I really did like this version of the movie. There's a couple plot things that didn't quite work for me, but it didn't detract from my enjoyment of the film too much. So that's
if I may be positive for a minute here, because
that'd be a nice change.
So I liked Lewis and Rachel. I liked their relationship a lot more in this one. I like the actors, like Jason Clarke and Amy Simmons. Do a lot better job than Denise Crosby and whoever that other guy was to play Lewis. Sorry, I don't remember his name from the first film.
Dale Midkiff.
There it is. How could I forget?
How could you forget? Even I didn't forget. Thanks for reminding me, John.
But they're not just the acting, but the way the scenes are written, their relationship. He's just because of the way this version of the story is structured, he is honest with her about the Pet Semetary. He says, we buried the cat. He buried Ellie. Belly comes home, that kind of stuff. Another thing spoiled in the trailer, like hug your daughter, all that stuff. Like, that would have been good if we didn't know that the mom would see her as the zombie. Because if you remember the first film, Denise Crosby as Rachel, just completely clueless about any of this. She's rushing home and has no clue. So I liked Lewis and Rachel. I liked their relationship together, and I liked the acting they had in their scenes, especially Rachel. I think Amy Simmons did a great job elevating the character.
I'm on board with that. I absolutely agree that she did. I liked her take on Rachel. I thought it was, any time I come down and I say like the performances were too muted in certain scenes, I know that that's the director telling the actor what to do. In terms of the believability and the chemistry, I think it was there between the characters. Like, I believed in the relationship, and I believed that, these were people that were a functional family that loved each other and existed. And I think that a large part of that has to do with the fact that they, Lewis and Rachel have a less melodramatic existence in this version of the film.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about one of the other elements in the film that I wasn't too keen on, and I don't know why they did it. So
why have to be so negative, Brandon? We're here saying good things about this movie. And
Come on, man. Jeez.
So when Ellie's killing Judd, why did she morph into his wife?
I agree with you that it was out of place, but my takeaway was that the evil that sent her back did it to screw with Judd's mind. I mean, I would think it's traumatic enough that the undead have come back to claim you, but I don't know, because she had a throwaway line where I forget precisely what she said, but she says like you're going to suffer for what you did.
Yeah,
and like an implication, right? Which didn't make sense at all. Like, it was a complete. If there had been a scene where like Judd was, furtive about why his wife died or the type of relationship that they had, but everything up to that point is, this is an old guy who desperately misses the missus and, that sort of thing. And, so I think it was an odd choice.
Yeah. See, what I thought, I don't know why they did it, but when they did it, I thought they were as soon as I saw that, I thought they were setting up for another scare later on where Ellie was going to kill her mom and be
as the sister.
Zelda.
Yeah.
As Zelda. Like, I thought that's what they were setting it up for. But even still, I don't understand why they were doing that. I don't understand, because that's some weird, fantastical element. And as we talk about in the Twilight Zone podcast all the time, like, you have a movie and you have a fantastical element, and that's where your suspension of disbelief is because that's the story you're telling. Okay, we're telling a story about an area that can, like, bring dead people back. But having this second fantastical element is just weird and doesn't make any sense, and it really pulled me out of the film when it happened. I'm like, I don't understand why they did it. Maybe it'll become clear upon a rewatch, because again, I've only seen it once. I saw it a few nights ago. I don't understand that choice.
They only had the one reference because there's the wedding picture, and he's like, "Is that your wife?" It's like, "What happened to her? She got sick. She died. That was it." And all it does is establish he's a lonely old man. It doesn't establish anything else, or it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
So it did feel you could really cut that out, and it wouldn't affect anything. Like, you have an evil zombie girl trying to kill you, and it was him and Ellie had a relationship. That's what makes it tougher than him and Gage in the first version, because he's a cute kid, but him and Ellie are the ones with the connection, and to have him have to be the one to try and kill her with the gun and all that, that's a lot heavier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we might as well, we haven't talked about it yet. Let's talk about Zelda. Is there anything else we want to add about the Zelda plot line? Because again, even still, I don't know that it's necessary to the story. Maybe I'm just missing the heart of this, but even if the directors are saying we don't necessarily need it, I don't necessarily think that it's there, because they called back to it a lot more in this film than they did in the first one. But like, I didn't like how they switched up the death with Zelda, with the dumbwaiter. Like, I thought it was unnecessary, and it was just for a cheap scare.
Mm-hmm.
So because when she chokes to death, like, that's a more believable thing for a young kid to think it's their fault, rather than this person crawling down the dumbwaiter and dying because they crawled into the dumbwaiter or something. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think that the decision to have Zelda manifest by falling behind the bathroom mirror
what was that?
It was distracting, is what it was. and to have her hearing, like it's almost like